Mistakes, rework and ignorance are costing Australia at least $50 billion a year.
I know there's a lot of builders out there that when they get into those situations where they're chasing their tail and they need money, they just start cutting corners. They start substituting materials.
I believe that the tools offers the pathway to the compliance that we need to know, plus we stitch in best practice.
Where has this been for the last 20 years of my career? G'day guys, welcome back to another episode of Level Up. We're taking advantage of our time down in Sydney to bring you another cracking episode this afternoon. So the next guest we have for you is absolutely, I think, an incredible human being. I know a little bit about him, but we're going to find out a lot more over the next hour or so. But I believe they have developed one of the best tools that the construction industry has ever seen. And as soon as I got sent it and I seen it, it was a no-brainer for me and I had to jump on board with it. So massive warm welcome to Jerry Tyrrell from Tools App. How are you?
I'm fine, Dwayne. Thank you for your kind words. But it's the product that matters, and the product contains so much of the songline of good building, and we'll talk about that.
Mate, this podcast could go a lot of different directions. Like we've just been chatting for 10, 15 minutes and you just blow me away. We've just been talking about how my schooling experience. So maybe we can touch on that for a minute. Because I think it ties in, like, my schooling experience is why I jumped on your app. Because, like I was just saying to you, like I didn't like school. I sat at the back. I played up. I paid no attention because it did not interest me at all. And then even through my apprenticeship and then getting my builder's license, like that schooling part of it almost stopped me from following my dream because I wasn't interested in, I don't know, that way of learning or the sitting in the classroom. I'm not sure what it is. You can explain it better than I can, I think. But
it's unfair, and I think it's discriminatory. And today there will be maybe 500,000 children that are treated shabbily. I don't think it's intentional, but they don't realise that some of us. I put things in patterns. I line things up.
Yeah.
I'm mathematically okay, and I was all right about maybe not understanding some things which were irrelevant to me, but I still stayed with the classroom. I want that to change. I want building and trade skills and practical skills to be seen as good as anything else. In fact, I don't really want to have any stratification. If you love what you're doing and you want to learn about it, that's fine.
Yeah, well, and so through my building career, I've taken building codes and standards very seriously, but like to find out information, and like Jerry's got some copies of them here, like these massive books that you find one bit in one section and then you have to go to another section to find something else. And depending on the class of building, like there's different books you got to be looking at. So I probably didn't take enough notice of the building codes to what I probably should have been. And then like when I seen your app, I was like, where has this been for the last 20 years of my career?
They should have taught you and I on how to find things and to how to deal with wordy documents. I'll just shout out to the ABCB. Their goal to provide a national building standard was phenomenal. I condemn the way it's been delivered. I condemn how inaccessible it is. I condemn its structure and its contents. I condemn the number of volumes, but it's particularly well-intentioned. Look, it befuddles me and anybody, and I'm not arrogant at all. It befuddles me at times finding information quickly.
It's hard. And I guess before we go too much further, this one, like obviously we're talking about our own experience. So this is our own opinions, our own experience. So everyone needs to go and do their own homework on those types of things. But yeah, I think there's something very exciting about the way you're doing this. And I'm even more interested to find out why yourself and your investors, like you've currently put in well over $10 million to get an app that's hopefully going to, well, I believe it will revolutionise the industry.
For everybody who's got it, I think they're finding that it is the best asset. And ironically, it's in fact that as the use decreases, but you're sharing it more and opening it up to help others with it. If you don't need it so much, it means that you've learned those critical measurements and it's not as necessary. But in my opinion, there's no substitute to knowledge. And I believe that the tools offers the pathway to the compliance that we need to know, plus we stitch in best practice. We integrate.
So sorry to cut you off, Jerry. So just what is, can you just for the listeners, before we get too far into it, like what is Tools App? Like what's it what's your aim? Why have you done it? What is it?
My aim is to provide, in fact, the world, but initially Australia is our test. So my primary aim is I would like Australia to be the best builders in the world and the most productive. It's going to be difficult, the latter, but I believe we can be the best builders in the world using knowledge and getting back to craft. So the other objective, to achieve that, the how on that is giving all of us access to the knowledge we want at the end of our life, or at the end of a court case, or at the end of some horrible mistake. I want to give them the knowledge as early as possible. And TAFE and the universities are coming on board, and they will help deliver knowledge when we're being taught.
So you've used some words when we've had some conversations before. But tools is it picturizing? Like what it's putting their standards.
It's illustrating.
Visualizing.
It's illustrating compliance, best practice. Compliance is a combination of NCC documentation and the reference documents, some of which are standards, and sometimes it may refer to NASH and some of the publications and the technical information. There's a lot of information in the law of LORE of building, the craft of building. So we try to stitch that in as well. We say it's not mandatory to do, but it's quite often we don't know about that, like a wash on stairs, a slope on a parapet, all of those sort of things we try to stitch in. And then we try to color code things and make it easy to understand and all on one page and zoomable.
It's like, from what I've seen of it so far, it's incredible. And I love your emails. You keep sending through your updates and you're always adding stuff to it. But I just love how easy and simple it is to use. Like, we've only had it for a little while. I was just saying to you, so my supervisor's using it quite regularly now. I'm looking at it when I'm doing proposals for jobs to see if there's anything I've missed or need to allow. Like, we are struggling a little bit to get our lead carpenters on site on board with it, but I think that's more back to me to make sure they understand that their time standing there looking at an app and getting the correct information is more important to me than just being head down, bum up all day. So,
and it's also getting us ready so that when we were either apprentices or students, or that we need to be taught to stop and find the information, never guess anything, and also understand how to find it. Tools offers about a 10 to 12 second pathway, so you can search visually, so it's very graphic. You can search by voice and you can search by typing in, so you can find that information pretty quickly. I'm not saying I think it's really easy, but then I've created it, and I probably knew a lot of the stuff that is in there. We do need to make sure that the 1.4 million Australians who need this spend a bit of time, because it's compared to the time that I spent on this, it's probably a thousandth of the time I spent delving into the NCC and not finding the answers I need or being confused. But if you do bother to really get to know, and I've had an architect in Western Australia say he nerded through for 10 hours, you may not need to do that, but most of you, if you can spend time, it's time well spent.
Yeah, while we've been talking, I actually got sent the app by Sean, the Tassie Builders blog. So when we went to Tasmania early in the year to record a podcast. We finished recording his podcast, and he said, "Hey, have you seen this?" He'd been sent it a couple of days or a couple
How
of weeks
did he
early.
find it? It's so good.
And yeah, straight away, he sent me I think it's your daughter's details, and yeah, that's how this all happened. So,
and hopefully it's merit, because the reason why I was very, very attentive to the knowledge that I got from tradesmen were they knew a lot. They did a fantastic job. It's trouble-free. It's still standing well, 5 decades on. And so I'm hoping that tools, the reason why you've persisted with it is it answers your current question and it goes deep. Those EDMs that come out each week, they're little tiny micro-learning modules, believe it or not. Stairs came out today.
yeah.
Maintenance stairs. And I didn't know about the 600 minimum rule for a landing for maintenance stairs. So these are all the sort of little things that we get each week.
Can we tell our listeners a bit of background?
Sure.
Like, how did you get to this? Because everyone's going to be wondering, well, he's doing all this. Why is he doing it? So,
I don't know. I've had a charmed life. I certainly wasn't from a wealthy family, but I really enjoyed my life. I was treated well. And I suppose I want people to have a really joyful experience. And I've really loved my career. I always knew I'd be an architect from age 12. I started working as a tradesman when I was 17, digging ditches and, in fact, a labourer, digging ditches. And I was just curious. And they were so tolerant and nice to me. So I've just learnt along the way. I was always the person who wanted to know how to do things, wet the bricks down, put the barrow in the right direction, store timber properly outside on gluts,
Mate.
cover the timber, cover the dressed timber, understand the grain. Joiners, craftsmen would tell me so much, and I would just be sucking that in. So I'm not arrogant about this, but most people who know me know that I'm a handy tradesman in most trades. I wouldn't be up to you as a apprenticed carpenter, but I would know most things. And I certainly know about arrasing doors, backing off doors, and I would probably have been telling all craftsmen, paint the bottom of your doors, never embed your joinery into tiles, all those things which we should be doing now routinely.
Well, that's the other thing I loved about your app, because there's a lot of best practice things in there. And yet, look, they're not standard, but they're absolute no-brainer, common sense thing. And the reason I laughed then is because your comment on making sure the wheelbarrow is facing the same way. It's all those little things that people don't think of, but they're those little things that create huge inefficiencies and throughout a whole day
and danger,
but and so for people that aren't quite maybe don't get what we're talking about there, like if you're landscaping, bricklaying, block laying, moving materials around a site, like where you place your wheelbarrow, if you push it into a pile of dirt and then load it up and then you have to turn it around while it's full, is a lot more inefficient than if you take it to the pile of dirt, turn it around in the direction you want to leave when it's full, and then load it up. It's a no-brainer.
It should be common sense, and we should be
common sense.
So one of the things we'll be doing with tools, and we're digressing, but we will be trying to make sure that people can see common sense roadmap, drainage, substrates, cleaning, all those skills we learned from our mothers and grandmothers, sometimes our fathers, about preparing surfaces correctly and understanding the new craft is science. For us to understand surface texture, chemical composition, dry time, cure, there's nothing wrong with us. And ideally our mentors tell us, but also every now and then we've got to look at the back of the package and read it carefully.
Yeah, that is I'm just massive now, and it's as simple as following instructions. I'd like to get your opinion on this, Jerry. I believe that a lot of the issues that we have, and possibly the reason we're talking about some of the things we're going to talk about today, is because our industry has created this culture of racing to the bottom. And people feel that they have to be the cheapest price to stay busy all the time and make money. But reality is that, I tell my clients all the time, because there's this sort of, I'm from Brisbane, most of our work's inner city Brisbane. And I hear so many people say, DPS Construction's an expensive builder, or we have friends and family that say, we can't afford to build with you. And I say, you can't afford not to. We are not expensive. We do things correctly. So, and you've got some numbers on what defective work is costing us.
I just don't want to be I don't want to be seen as negative, because I'm very positive about the future. But mistakes, rework and ignorance are costing Australia at least $50 billion a year in direct losses, rework, lack of productivity, carbon cost. Insurance alone across Australia is gouging $3 to $4 billion that goes into commercial shareholders' pockets. Nothing goes back. We don't even have a body that tells us precisely what's going wrong and why it's going wrong. So it's just ridiculous. The thing I'm saying to everybody is do it well the first time, and that is so much cheaper than the alternative that we're facing now, and that on the watch of all the leaders in the industry, the problems are still persisting.
Well, look, hopefully some government people or industry bodies listen to this podcast and we can give them a bit of a shake-up. But again, back to the cost things, it's so ingrained. I even know through my apprenticeship, my boss being on the phone and I could hear him on the phone lowering his price to win a job. And I know when I started doing my business, there was plenty of meetings that I'd be at and I didn't know how to run my business. So I would
stand your ground on price.
No, well, I would drop my price. A client or an architect would say, if you come down $20,000, we'll sign the contract. And you don't understand what it's taking to run your business, and you think you're making money, and it gets worse the bigger the numbers. So when you start doing $1 million homes or $2 million homes, and in your mind you think that you're making 10%, but you don't understand that it's actually taking you 18 or 22% to run your business, and so you think, it's $1 million job, I'm making 10%, that's $100,000. I'm sitting at a meeting. If I drop at 20, I've got the job. I need the money.
Then it rains.
I need the cash flow. No, yeah, all right. Okay, so if we drop 20, we've got the job. yep, all right, let's sign the contract. And then you're chasing your tail from day one. And so I used to cost myself more money because I would not leave a job until it was perfect. But I know there's a lot of builders out there that when they get into those situations where they're chasing their tail and they need money, they just start cutting corners. They start substituting materials and they get the job finished. And whatever, 6 months, 2 years, 5 years later, the client's ringing because there's something wrong with waterproofing or a retaining wall never got waterproofed or whatever the story is. And they blame the client, they blame the architect, they blame all these things. But in reality, it was them taking on the job, not costing it correctly, and cutting corners.
That they should never have taken.
Yeah. Like it's incredible how our industry just runs like that, and everyone thinks like they get themselves in this trouble with their cash flow. So yeah, they just keep digging themselves a deeper hole.
Well, I agree, and I think that this is some of the lessons I'm learning from you is that the building knowledge, the business knowledge, is only a very small portion of what we're taught. They're approaching that a little bit. So you can have professional skills, but you need to know what you don't know, and quite often you may not be good at the business skills needed.
Yeah. Well, we know now from all the work I do with my training business, Live Like Build, like over 80% of the tasks it takes to run a successful business are off-site.
Wow.
So all your administration, your quoting and estimating, your job management, your scheduling. And so if you're a passionate tradesman and your focus is the on-site stuff, yeah, it's not hard to see why so many trades businesses get themselves into trouble.
So a shout out to the business skills within, and can I say about partnerships and teamwork too?
Yep.
Because the bigger you get, the more you need to put good people around you who have different skills.
100%.
I'm lucky enough to have a twin brother who's an accountant and a lawyer, so we were able to navigate lots of things. But if you haven't got a twin brother, then ideally getting good skills, understanding, you probably advise MYOB or Xero. A lot of people use those docos because it's a fast track to very good quality accounting practices. And having a mentor who sets up your businesses and your trusts and your accounts properly when you're 23, not trying to retrofit something back when you're 43.
So sorry that we went off track a bit there, but so back to your labouring, like you went from labouring. So you've been you're a qualified architect.
So during your university, I must have been a boring person, but I was either working, playing sport, or studying. So in those days, you got 2 degrees. You got a Bachelor of Science, and then you got a Bachelor of Architecture. So I was a reasonably competent tradesman in most things by the end of that 6-year period. We then bought 3 terraces in inner city Sydney when I was 23, and we rolled them over in 4 months each, made some money, sold all 3, and then we moved on to other assets, and my twin brother and I have probably done 80 side hustles since then. So, and I was on site all the time.
Yeah, so you're very passionate, you're very involved. Like this isn't just, because one thing I see all the time in this industry is people that come in and create softwares and things, and they've actually never worked in it. They just think they're solving problems. But like you've been in the trenches. You know what's behind all these things, and I assume you built tools because you've seen, like, you're passionate about it and you want to make it easier for everyone else that's coming through the industry.
Well, we know about artificial intelligence. I'll call it DI, that when you're on site, it's Dwayne intelligence. You probably don't need to go to tools, or if you do, it's a bloody good reason. You're looking at accessibility geometry. You're looking at the width of a car space. You're looking at a thickness of a pavement. You're just double checking things before the concreter finishes things off. But most of the time, there isn't a Dwayne in the background. There isn't a Jerry. There isn't an exceptional craftsman. Tools is that exceptional craftsman. And I'd like to think it is quite granular. And I haven't had a war with many of my colleagues, but I've said I wanted to illustrate exactly what happens. And I want to highlight the high-risk items, which is why we often use red and colours, and all of our key dimensions that are ISO certified are in red. And it's got a citation number. If you do want to go back and double-check where it is in this document, you can do that. It's essentially what I would want, which you might think is very selfish, but in providing me with what I want, it's probably what most of us need to deliver the bulkhead, the recess, the joints.
Yeah.
In that $50 billion that it's costing Australia under the watch of all of the leaders and all the governments and everybody who thinks they're important, that's not taking into account the stress of a defect claim on the person who did it, the person who didn't intend to do it, the suppliers that don't back them up, and then the emotional strain and the mental health issues of people who haven't made money from a job because of a mistake they never wanted to make.
Yeah, but your app just makes it very simple, easy. Like you can literally have it in your pocket. That's what I love about it. Like so, we've got multiple like iPads in our business. Everybody's got a phone these days, so there's literally no excuse not to know what the standard is.
Well, I'm hoping that it becomes the go-to because we're in a digital world. And initially, my team, and it's dual platform now, so you can go on your laptop if you're a designer or you're a specifier or you're a consultant, you can double check it on your laptop. But the MIP, the most important person, the person doing the work, it was me as an apprentice and as a labourer, as a tradesman, and that's my dog in the background,
Hey,
Ralph,
Ralph,
and he's chasing his tail, which no doubt you might want to catch a cameo of. But that's what the builders are doing. They're
chasing their tail.
Often they're essentially blowing leaves off their lawn at the beginning of autumn.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just dumb stuff.
We might have a camera go over and
Oh, instead of just, it's such a mistake. No, so tools is a really simple way to get access to the compliant knowledge.
So, like, I'm really keen to dig more into, like, a lot of tradies out there will just think that I'm doing it right now. Like I've always done it this way. Like, what's the difference? And like, it's to me, it's worth getting access to something like your app and just flicking through it. And then if there is things on there that you aren't quite doing right, like it's not that you've done anything bad, it's just you don't know what you don't know. So now's the time to improve your game and start doing things the way you should be doing them.
Well, I'm with you. So for all the practitioners out there, including the designers and the certifiers and all the people sitting on top of the person doing it, if you're reluctant about learning the craft of building, then tools isn't for you. But if you want to reinforce the fact with somebody who's not putting a fall in your substrate, which I've always done. So now they are requiring falls in substrates. And if you're not making sure that there is an overflow that's lower than the back of the box gutter, or lower than the hob in your roof, or lower than your threshold, you need to get used to those basic craft 101 building rules.
Common sense.
It's common sense. Now you see that. So if you're a person who sadly has been taught by the process building industry, which is you go in, it's, whatever you do is okay, it doesn't matter, then you're going to have to wake up. You're going to preferably self-manage yourself and slap yourself and say, I need to change this because it's not the way craftsmen build. But otherwise you get so much information from tools in one of the 300 tools that are there with the backup information that allows you to see exactly how a craftsman would do it.
How does the tools app, have you basically just illustrated all the standards? Are they aligned? Or is it I'm just trying to get my head around
the structure.
Yeah. So have you spoken to does it interact? I'm not.
Well, there are a couple of stories here. Okay, so what we've tried to do is we've taken a risk approach. Now, I've said to the NCC, the ABCB, who's the governing body for this, that they should always have structured this on risk, and there should have been a single volume, and it should have told you about all those things we're talking about, common sense, drainage, all the principles, movement, different materials, and then give you the granular information about specifics, balustrades, floors, whatever. That didn't happen. The NCC refers to reference documents, but it only sends you off in one lane. So if it sends you off to wet area, that's all it sends you off to. Whereas in fact, it should be waterproofing as a general principle, because waterproofing applies to interior, exterior. It's the same principles, except that one is an outside item.
And then on top of all the information, so you've taken all the information from the NCC and illustrated it. Mm-hmm. Because each of your illustrations demonstrates a lot of things, and I love how you can just look at one illustration. It tells you minimum cover, minimum fall. There's a lot of minimum
slip resistance, a door swing that might interfere with a handrail.
But it's very it's all there. You actually have measurements on the drawings. You're not reading through a code that says, in this situation you need this much above a hard surface, but if it's this situation you need this much. Your illustration
in 2 dimensions, black and white,
clearly demonstrates it. And then on top of that, you've added your best practice solutions.
Look, I have a lot of respect to the people who often gave their free time to Australian standards and the governing bodies that write the reference documents. So that's really great. Now, I have chaired one standard, sat on three more, written a standards handbook, and they were very kind to give me an innovation award for a proof of concept about what I wanted them to do themselves. In 2018, they were kind enough to give me an innovation, but they were unwilling to consider the best practice information that I believe standards needed to include. And it was just like trying to push a bulldozer single-handed to get things done efficiently. So that's why we've done it collaboratively with the whole ingredients from all these important publications are now all embedded in a three-dimensional image with references back to the various sources, which we call citations.
Oh, mate, look, I just can't explain how awesome it is. And also the fact that you've taken it upon yourself. So your brother's involved in this as well, is he?
Yeah, we've got a team. We call them the Wolves, the Wolf Pack.
Yeah.
And it's boys and girls. And so we just were howling at the moon a little bit, but there's a lot of energy. What we call the unsupervised brilliance that I've experienced with both Peter, my building mate, and Tim, my twin brother. We've now got a really great digital guy. We've got a CAD guy who is just, you know, those people that just see what you see and then make it better because they contribute.
Yeah.
We've got just some really good people blending together to make tools work. And we've got a lot of offshore. We've got some offshore people, some architects in the Philippines, digital people in Vietnam, people in different regions.
I think it's incredible, mate, because I know it's like my wife and I think I've briefly spoken about, like we built a software which was started as QuoteSpec and it's now grown into QuoteEaze, and like we invested over $1 million into that before we launched it. Like that business like is on track to make money in the next couple of years, but like people don't realize the money that can get invested in some of these startup ideas and businesses. Like you're over 10 million.
Yeah, but I'm just fascinated because sometimes I feel alone, and recently I've felt a little bit resentful because I've been thinking, why didn't the government do this? Why didn't the associations? When I hear you say, because quoting effectively and ideally stitching between what you're quoting and the best practice information and being able to do it efficiently and having the paperwork behind your quote so that nobody can litigate against you, it's a really difficult thing to do. So shout out to you.
Yeah, well, it's a whole that we believe we've created the best software in the industry to. So we don't call them quotes anymore. We call them proposals. Mm-hmm. But yeah, people don't realise what goes in. Like we put over $300,000 into that, and it needed more, so that we then sold our family home to do that, and then we went and rented for a little bit, and then and then we got some investors that come in, and between us and the investors, it's well over $1 million now into that business.
Well, here's my promise. If the industry resets itself because of good leadership, so I'm really hoping that the leaders will step up and they'll say, enough's enough. On our watch, this is happening. Let's make the changes that are overdue. But we've attacked specification because specification is just a name for the list of documents that are used to construct. So we've now got...
We've got Jerry's dog in the background doing circus tricks.
My youngest son, who's 7 years old, is hairy and a redhead, and he's just chases his tail sometimes because he's been in the car and on building sites for the last 3 days. So let's have a look at that. That if we solve the quality crisis, so the quality crisis is deep, but I'm going to say that there are a lot of things to deal with. So your QuoteEaze relates to specifications, also relates to contracts. Contracts are like this. They're cumbersome. They need to be reworked. I know that the Building Commission is trying to do a little bit with the acts, but that's just in New South Wales. We need to attack all these things which are stopping builders from either understanding what they need to do and making money.
Oh, 100%, definitely. And this, like your app, is going to help people do that. Like it's going to make more money because it's simplifying everything.
I think it's an important point. I think access to knowledge and access to information, I think it's really seminal to it. Sometimes it's really quite frustrating because I look at people and say, well, why would I look? And I'm thinking, hang on. I mean, besides the fact I've got 1,000 people who have gone pro and are paying money to look at this, including some really big dogs, that's flattering. But then every now and then you get somebody who says, oh, look, I wouldn't even bother. And I'm thinking, is that in their personality? Is that an industry-wide problem? Is that the fact that we haven't broken through?
Look, it's hard, Jerry, because this whole podcast is about creating a new building industry, like sharing stories, getting information in front of people, getting guests in front of an audience that can tell stories about their career, about their experience, about their products. That everything is aimed at creating a new building industry. And what I mean by that is creating an industry where everyone runs successful, sustainable, and profitable businesses. And it's so, like, it's easy for me to sit here and talk about all this now, but it took me 10 or 12 years of running a shit show of a business.
But doing great work, I'd imagine.
Yeah,
the work was good.
Mate, it's fun. This came up at a conversation at lunch today. Like, our industry rewards us for doing running a bad business.
You're seen as successful.
So in 2012, I won the Master Builders Brisbane Award for Rising Star. So back when I won that award, it wasn't an award that you filled out an entry for. It was an award that we had multiple homes entered in the awards. I think we won 4 other awards that year, including Best Home over $2 million. And so I won what was called a Rising Star Award. And the Rising Star Award was awarded to someone that Master Builders saw to be running a good business, building great products, all these types of things. And so just to reiterate that, I won that in 2012. 2012 was a year that I went into Christmas holidays with anxiety and depression and was ready to shut the business down. And so on top of winning the Master Builders Awards, we had 10 of our houses in the top 100 homes in Brisbane.
Wow.
I had a lot of my suppliers, because you're
How many hours a week were you working?
I couldn't even tell you. Probably 80 plus. I had, because I was turning over millions of dollars, so I was spending millions of dollars with my suppliers. So my suppliers were taking me on overseas holidays. I was getting asked to speak at luncheons. Like, everyone was rewarding me, and yet behind the scenes, our business was terrible. 2012 was the year that we thought we were going to lose everything. The banks were trying to we couldn't pay our bills. We had terrible cash flow. All the years of bad money management and tax bills and those things had all caught up with me. And so for me, it was like, on one side, I got the industry rewarding me and telling me how well I'm doing. And on the other side, I've got my accountant and my wife and some advisors saying, Dwayne, you're not running a good business. You can't afford to be doing this. Like, you need to
balance.
Cut back. So it is, I completely understand why so many people in our industry really struggle to see what they need to do to better their business and to better themselves. Because, and let's face it, like these days with Instagram, like there was no Instagram when I was back when I was doing this.
You weren't making mistakes, so here it is. Here's a person who wasn't making mistakes, building well, hardworking.
Oh, look, we had a few
Some
mistakes.
people would have let you down, but it was unintentional.
I was trying to my best. I was trying to do everything right.
You add to that equation the workload that you're doing, and more than the minor mistakes you had, so some major mistakes, some callbacks, the misuse of contracts that we shouldn't be bound by. The contracts that we're bound by now are terrible. Most of the regulations we're bound by are unsympathetic. Performance solutions we don't control, so you've got to spend a lot of unnecessary money if a deemed to satisfy solution can't be employed. If there's any uncertainty, often it comes back to the builder to put unpaid time in to fix a problem.
One of my biggest mistakes, Jerry, was I believe that I used to chase jobs. I wanted to be known for doing some of the bigger, good look, like, I don't know, just flash homes, I guess you'd call them. And I didn't understand. Like, I just thought I got given a set of, here's an approved set of drawings, go and build it. And so all of the big defects that we have had over the years that have cost me, I would say somewhere between probably $600,000 and $800,000 combined.
You're listening, architects and designers, to this?
Were due to, like, I did it. I built the home. I did them as per drawings. Like, so I mentioned. So one of them was a large external tiled deck on a third level that we ended up getting held responsible for, and it turned out it was an engineering fault because the joist had been undersized and the deck sagged. One was, well, probably the most expensive one-off was a pool. We had a pool that had been designed with a 14-metre long waterfall edge.
Okay.
The pool was basically facing the perfect direction that it was in the sun all day.
Okay.
And they selected black tiles. And so I knew it wasn't right, but it didn't matter. Like the client wanted what they wanted. It was specified. And because me as a builder went ahead and did the job. So what was happening, like 2 years later, we had to go back and completely jackhammer the full interior lining of the pool, strip all the tiles off it, and basically
fully black interior.
no. So it had a light pebbled interior,
Okay.
but all the waterfall edge was all tiled black. So what was happening that it'd cool down, it'd be cool from nighttime. The sun would come up and it would heat up the edge all day, and then it would go back down, and the filter would come on at certain times and the water would go over it. So it was changing temperature a lot. And there was so much pressure on the front of the outside of the shell that it popped all the pebble creating off on the inside of the pool shell.
Oh, so the thermal.
It was all expanding and contracting. No one at the time, we had so many people look at that job, and no one.
You were blamed.
Well, it come back to I thought I was fine. I kept pushing back on it, and I basically said, look to the owner, look, I don't think I've done anything wrong. I'm not sure what's going on here.
You needed to talk to me. I would have told you inadequate movement joints. I would have looked at the drawings and said that the movement joint should have been here. They should have separated the two substrates. They should have looked at the thermal load. And
well, yeah, but I know that now. I didn't know at the time.
Yeah, but there are. So one of the things that we'll be doing with tools is that we call it the early adopters rule. So you never use a product that hasn't had a decent track record.
And that I should have done that. Like now, like these days, I can't believe the amount of specifications now when it comes to claddings, tiles, waterproofing, pre-prime timber that basically says in fine print, if you paint this like a dark color on this product or a black tile, like if you lay a black tile over a waterproofing on an external deck, there is no warranty. Like
dark external doors, so dark finishes. So we have a selection tool. So we're pushing a lot of duty back on the architects and the designers on the choices. So if you're choosing something, you need to know the consequence of your choice. Now, obviously, I've already said that we don't have a governing forensic body. The industry doesn't. And that's between all the players. So I don't see a lot of difference between what a designer does, what an engineer does, what a contractor does, what a subcontractor does, what anybody does. We're all doing the same thing. We're building something. So we should all be trying to work out, how do we get information about something that's complex before we build it wrong, like you did with that black tile?
Well, that's what I'm getting at. Like I got probably 4 or 5 other stories, but all the 4 or 5 or 6 major defects that we've had that have cost us tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars, we've followed the drawings and the specification. And the way I've always been led to believe is, like, as the head contractor, as soon as I take responsibility of those stamped plans, I'm responsible for that. So if I go ahead and build something that is wrong,
depending how the contract is constructed, and that's what I'd like to simplify. I'd like to make sure that if you are given something and you build in accordance with the drawings and the schedule of finishes or the choices are wrong and the drawing does not show something that's non-standard, black tiles, for instance, I probably would have jointed those at maybe maximum 2 meters instead of the 4.5. And I certainly would have thought about, I don't know whether I would have thought about the transfer of thermal load to Pebblecrete below.
Yeah. So what, just to go back to that one, so the client kept asking what was wrong, because when they were in the pool, it felt like when you pushed on the Pebblecrete, it was moving.
Yeah.
And I kept telling them it couldn't be. Like, you're crazy. And they tried sending me photos and stuff. You couldn't see it. Anyway, I went out there to look at the site, and like you could clearly just look in the water and you could see this big bulge. And I thought the wall, like when I say huge, it was like you could see that it was maybe
water behind paint,
10, 20 mil. Yeah.
Water behind paint.
And I got in the pool and you could literally push on the Pebblecrete and it wasn't attached to the concrete shell. And
well, there's a bond issue there too. So there may be some issues with the way the Pebblecrete was bonded.
So we had all the Pebblecrete companies out there. We had the glue companies out there. We had the company that did the Pebblecrete for us. Like it was.
You learned heaps, but you didn't get paid for it, and it cost you a fortune.
Yeah. So long story short, I didn't just jump in and fix it. Like I got a lot of people out there to give me advice and tried to.
But you eventually paid the cost.
Well, I eventually wore the bill for it. So
now you had the financial means to deal with that, but it was very unfair, and it was due mainly to lack of knowledge. Tools is going to give you about 80% of the answers to prevent that from happening. What we are trying to do with the industry, we're just trying to say, if it's non-standard, make sure that somebody's responsible for any of the information that should be either sought or contained in something that's non-standard.
Yeah, well, look, mate, I think you're doing incredible things with the app, and I highly, highly encourage everyone that listens to this podcast to get on board with it. Is there anything you want to add before we wrap up our conversation, mate?
No, but I do want 1.4 million Australians to man up, to change the industry from the bottom up. And it's all of us. It's not in silos of contractors and subbies and architects and designers and certifiers and legislators and teachers. It's all of us. And if we don't do it, we're going to continue to be a laughingstock. We can't have, I believe in teamwork, but unions that are gouging us, we've got to get rid of. But we need to make sure that everybody on the building sites are properly protected. So there's lots to do, but it's in every one of the 1.4 million of us. And I shout out to you, Dwayne, for doing your bit. I'm doing my bit with tools. I think it's a cracker. And so I look forward to all of you using the right tools on your next jobs.
Jerry, look, thanks very much for coming on board. Look, for all the listeners, Jerry and his team are going to do an incredible deal. So if you use the code LEVELUP20, you will get 20% off the Tools app. Look, go out, have a look at the app. It is absolutely awesome. If you run a business like I do with multiple teams, get your supervisors using it, get your carpenters using it. It is just absolutely awesome. It is so easy to use. And like I said at the start, this is something, you see so many things coming into our building industry. I believe this is going to make a massive difference. So thanks, Jerry, for coming on. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Dwayne. And this is Ralph, of course. Ralph is in a lot of our socials. He's very, very, well, when he was younger, he was incredibly popular, but he's, in fact, he's quite adoggable.
Very good. Well,
Thank you.
As always, like, subscribe, and help us continue to make this Australia's #1 construction podcast. We're going to see you on the next episode.
Are you ready to build smarter, live better, and enjoy life? Then head over to livelikebuild.com/elevate to get started.
Everything discussed during the Level Up podcast with me, Dwayne Pearce, is based solely on my own personal experiences and those experiences of my guests. The information, opinions, and recommendations presented in this podcast are for general information only, and any reliance on the information provided in this podcast is done at your own risk. We recommend that you obtain your own professional advice in respect to the topics discussed during this podcast.